Good afternoon. My name is Larry Berger. I'm head of the Department of Animal Science, and it's our pleasure to host this inaugural In-Cow Symposium. We're delighted that you could join us. I trust that you'll find this to be a very valuable experience, and we're really excited about the program and the information that we have that we can share. Just so that everyone enjoys it, we asked if you could turn off your cell phone. That way we won't get interrupted, and everyone around you will be able to hear the speakers. It's my pleasure to introduce the gentleman who's going to welcome you officially to University of Nebraska. Ronnie Green grew up in Virginia. He was on a mixed livestock farm, showed Angus cattle for many years, went to VPI and got his BS there, got a master's at Colorado State, and then a PhD here at the University of Nebraska. After that, he joined Texas Tech, was on faculty there for several years, and then Colorado State recruited him to come and head up their beef genetics research group, and so he spent several years there. Then had an opportunity to go into private industry for a few years, and from there he went to USDA back in Washington. And at that time, he was on the executive secretary of the White House Interagency Working Group dealing with animal genomics. Ronnie's an animal geneticist by training, and he worked a lot with developing the genomes for the various species. Since then, he then was with Pfizer for a while, and we've been able to recruit him here very happily to come to University of Nebraska. So it's my pleasure to introduce the NU Vice President and Harlan Vice Chancellor of the Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources, Dr. Ronnie Green.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Larry, for the introduction. I need to get them to cut that thing down substantially. But it's a pleasure to welcome you to Lincoln and welcome you to the university. You sit here right at the edge of the city campus of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. We have an east campus, as many of you know, about 1.5 miles further east. This is a really exciting time for us in agriculture. It's a really exciting time in terms of what you think we need to do in the future, and you think about the innovations and challenges that are out ahead of us. Larry told you about my background in the beef industry. I see a lot of faces around the room, some of you who I haven't seen in a while in the industry, and the beef industry is no different. We've got some big challenges ahead of us, some big opportunities ahead of us, and thanks to the generosity of Kenny Ng and in honor of his wife Caroline, the opportunity to invest in this area of research, in this area to do innovation in the industry, and to think differently in some ways than we've thought traditionally is pretty important. And Kenny, thank you very much for what you've done to bring that about. I know I say that on behalf of Russell from A&M and Clint's here from Oklahoma State, and certainly here at the University of Nebraska. We appreciate your gift very, very much. I had a visitor in my office this morning. We had a little bit of discussion about this, and he knows who he is. He's sitting in the audience. And we talked a little bit about what some of the challenges are that are ahead of the beef industry. There's some collective wisdom in this room when I look around the room at how many years some of you have been in this business and been associated with different aspects of the business. And when you think about some of the things that lie ahead, and I'm going to use a statistic here that I think is an important one for you to remember, the fact that by 2050 we expect, you hear the statistic you usually hear is 2 billion more people doubling food production. The statistic you don't hear as often is that we expect by 2050 there to be 3 billion more people in the world eating animal protein than today. And that's a pretty profound statistic when you start thinking about it. And you think about the beef supply chain and the beef part of that animal protein equation and what's going to be required to meet that need and meet that demand in a sustainable way long term, that's a pretty big challenge ahead of us and a pretty big opportunity ahead of us as an industry here in the U.S. that has driven that industry, as you know, historically worldwide. So we're excited about what those opportunities are. I think you'll see in the packet of information, I understand Dr. Berger has provided to you a copy of the Strategic Discussions for Nebraska publication that we just put out here a few weeks ago. That's an annual publication. This one's focused on the beef industry, and it's focused on how the industry's changing, how the industry demographics are changing. Many of us are well aware of that, what's happened in the industry in recent years, and how we expect those demographics to change into the future. One of the things that I've said for a long time, some of you in the room will remember this from some of those previous jobs that Larry was talking about that I've held in the industry. I've said for a long time, the number one thing we're going to have to do to improve the beef industry is to improve the efficiency of nutrient utilization and to improve the ability to put what we put through these animals to add value to the product, that in order for us to be sustainable long term, we're going to have some innovation to do ahead of us. And I think we all recognize that and that opportunity. So to be here and to be talking about that innovation, to have the chance to listen to that, in this case on the cow-calf side, and some interesting things that are even happening semantically around the industry with how dry lotting of cows is working for various purposes, I think is a right direction and on the right road for us to be talking about. So again, welcome to the University of Nebraska. I hope you'll enjoy. Those of you that are here from off of our campus will enjoy being here the next couple of days. If you choose to stay and watch us play UCLA on Friday, we'd be happy to have you here in town as part of that process. We're looking forward to that on Saturday and experience the growth that you'll see around you here in Lincoln. I was just sharing with Russell, there's a tremendous amount of growth that has happened just next door to you here in this city in the last few years. Last thing I'll say to you is I'm really optimistic for the future of agriculture. I hope many of you know that. We have just released our enrollment data here at the University of Nebraska this past week for the current academic year. We have an all-time record enrollment at the university. We have an all-time record enrollment in agriculture at the university. There are a number of institutions around the country that are experiencing that, and I think there's a lot of optimism around that number to see young people being attracted back into our fields, to go back not just into agribusiness, but into production agriculture for the first time in a long time. So thanks for being here. We look forward to a great conference. I actually am going to sit and listen to cattle for the next 3 hours. Don't get a chance to do that very often, and I look forward to seeing many of you. Welcome to Nebraska.
First of all, this, for me, well, first of all, let me thank University of Nebraska and everybody attending, and Oklahoma State and Texas A&M. Russell, across, are you going to stay here for the football game this Saturday, or are you going to go back to Texas? I'll trade you tickets. This, for me, this is all about Carolyn. And she'd be happy to see the crowd. And a lot of you people knew her. And she was an all-in kind of a gal. And her advice would be, get on with this meeting, let's get it done, and then let's have some wine and a good steak. And all of you that know her know that that'd be it. So we'll take off from there. And Mississippi's on there. Again, this kind of gets back to Caroline. I couldn't get comfortable on some of the other ranches we had after she drowned, and I just said I just can't handle this, and we've basically been relocating to. Well, we're out of Texas, almost. We're out of Oklahoma, out of California, which we didn't necessarily love California, but we loved the ranch, and maybe out of Nebraska, not because I don't like it here, and I always will come back, but we're trading land is what we're doing, and we think Mississippi gives us our best opportunity between the timber and the cattle. So we'll be, next year if I'm around, probably Mississippi will be the only place. Come see us. We've got a pretty nice place put together. Lots of houses, lots of lakes, 18 miles of river frontage, and lots of trees. And for anybody that don't know anything about the tree business, I'm going to tell you something. It's a piece of cake next to the cattle business. And if I'd have known about the tree business 30 years ago, I probably wouldn't be standing here right now. Okay, let's see. What's happened in the past decade plus 3 since the new millennium? This is my idea of the major events. The major events are the relentless beef cow liquidation, the relentless increase in land values, incredible drought, first in the South Plains, and then we shared this with you last year up here, didn't we? And then the final comment is that the cattle keep getting larger and larger, and either nutritionists are a lot better today than I was, or else the cattle were better. Probably a combination of both, I don't know, but performance is wonderful, cattle get bigger and bigger, but then who knows about efficiency, and I just throw that in there because the 82% calf crop, because that's what I've been told the average weaning calf crop is from the start. Well, that's not very good. Take a look at the beef cow numbers. I mean, this is just nothing short of incredible, I think. If you go from 1950 to last year, to January 1, and from 2000 to now, the 10-year cycle, well, obviously the 20-year cycle, it wouldn't even be into effect. How few cattle can we get along with? We don't know. We sure don't probably need as many as we had at one time. I'll tell you what we do know. We do know that 45 million cattle in 1975 was too damn many, and we don't ever want to go back there. And for people that think we just have to get the beef cow herd back up, I think I'd just like to see it stop the decline, but I don't think the numbers need to be where they were at one time because of our improved efficiency and just the increase in the size of the cattle. And for those of you who had the unfortunate experience of being in the cattle industry in 1974 and 1975, and in there, you know that 45 million cattle just damn near killed all of us. Land prices, what a deal. And I finally broke it out between pasture and cropland for the last 2 years. And the trend is the only thing that's important. And if you assume that if you're in the cattle business, you're in the land business, and vice versa, well, then these things go hand in hand. And I'll cover this right at the end, but my theory is that the last 10 years have been the most incredibly profitable time in the cow-calf business if you add to what's happened to your land values at the same time. And I personally, I don't think you can separate them. Now, some people are never going to sell the family ranch and all the rest. I obviously will sell anything when I need money, but which is fairly frequently. And I love to do 1031s. Where's Annie? Annie. I wanted to introduce you to Annie Powell as I've got a lot of good help, and Annie Powell runs everything for me, and I call her the queen of the 1031s. And we do a lot of 1031 exchanges, and people say, well, how about the kids? How are they going to handle all this when you're gone? And I said, why will I care when I'm gone anyway? And they got a lot more aren't they lucky to have that to worry about? Well, whatever. But what an incredible change we've had here. Just comparing the last 10 years, how many of you knew or would have thought that in 2001, price of corn was $1.80 a bushel? And we all know it got to $8 a bushel and then to $7. Obviously, when I put this together, it's out of date now. The fat cattle prices is about $3 higher. Maybe the 550 weight calves are about $15 or $20 higher. The yearlings are sure $15 higher. And again, part of the beauty of the cattle business anymore is what you can cash in terms of your packer cow values or your cull cow values. I had 80 cents there. We sold some at Norfolk, Nebraska last week, and I believe they brought 86 cents at the auction. And who knows where the corn price will be? If you're a user, that was a good crop report that came out today. If you haven't seen it, it's for the feeders, it's a good one. I'm just hoping the farmers hang on and think it's good enough for a while longer till I get this last farm sold up here, and then I'll be. Then I'll see. Anyway, and by the way, I'm not bragging about any of this because people that know me also know that I've been poor. A relative, you're never poor if you're not poor in spirit, but how all this came about, whatever money I have, how this came about is from nothing but land and the cow business. Not, I shouldn't say nothing, but mainly. And so anybody that says the land business and the cow business hasn't been good for the last 10 or 12 years, either they're mistaking or Annie's not doing good on keeping track of my books. I'm not sure which, but I tell people that I don't. I am a religious person, but I don't spend much time in church. And I said, so I don't tithe. And I said, this is my tithing, and I'm a Lutheran. Like Garrison Keeler says, I'm a non-practicing Lutheran, so I don't have to go to church, but I can still feel guilty. And so anyway, so I'm getting rid of my guilt complexes on some of this. Okay, what's happened the last 3 years? More of the same. The feeder market awakened for a little bit, but continued land price increases, continued cow liquidation, and then of course the record drought. We put wheels under our cattle in Texas and Oklahoma and headed north in finally the summer of 2010, and I think where I had the majority of my cattle, our total rainfall that year in that area in Texas was 1.4 inches. And I say there's 3 stages to a drought in terms of your mental attitude, and one is it's going to rain pretty soon, and the next is it's got to rain sometime, and then the third is it ain't ever going to rain, and we've all been there. Kelton wrote the book, the time when it never rained, and which was in the 50s, and people. Many people believed, like I said, it never was going to rain again. Anyway, we've had a lot of record prices all through this list the last 3 or 4 years, but it obviously hasn't guaranteed making people money. And the $1.32 fat cattle which was just $1.32 for a heartbeat, you know, lost some people $100 a head. And, you know, so, you know, who knows? Bred cows, you know, there's sure been $2,000 bred cows sold and $2,000 heifers. Ron Crocker, who's in the audience there, his partner, I don't know, I think his partner keeps this part to himself, but they sold F1 heifers at San Saba, what, 3 weeks ago, Ron? At, well, you tell them. And they weighed 680 pounds, and they were open, guaranteed open F1 heifers. So somebody is going to definitely get out there and pay too much again, and I think this will be the wreck for the cow business this next time around, which might be 2014. But we'll get that later. But pardon?
Would you repeat that price, please, that Ron gave with good hearing?
You got to get some hearing aids, Dave. I want to borrow mine. $1,780 for 675-pound heifers, open.
Thank you.
Yes, F1s. So even if you put that F1 steer in, which is of much less value, even if you put him in at half price, it's still not a bad sale. Major industry events and the net results. Massive cow liquidation in Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. 1 million cows left. And so far they haven't been replaced. Maybe we stalled out the decline, but we sure as hell haven't replaced them. Smallest beef cow herd in over 50 years. Continued excess feedlot capacity. Without a doubt, the stupidest deal we did in the feedlot business in my lifetime, and that's a long time anymore, and we've done a lot of stupid things, but the wholesale expansion of the feedlot capacity in the late 1995, 96 through 2001 or 2, in face of what appeared to be a decline in cow numbers, and turned out to be, that's haunted us yet, and it's going to haunt us for a long time to come. And 30% excess capacity might be a conservativeness, I don't know. We've had record high prices for calves and yearlings. What did Valentine, Nebraska had $2.45 for 50-weight calves last week? Is that not something? I think the huge deal, frankly, is the transfer of wealth from the former have-nots, or to the former have-nots. And by that I mean the farmers and the landowners and the cowmen. And you can say anything you want to, but the cow business is historically been a break-even business except for the land. And all of a sudden it's changed in the last 10 years, and we all know what's happened to the farmers and how they've been able to prosper the last several years. And the different government programs may have kept them alive, but it didn't necessarily give them much money to play with, and they have a lot of that now. The other thing that I think I'm even underestimating is the amount of cows that have moved to either confinement or semi-confinement. And we've kind of used that as part of our program for the last 10 years, and the program is very simple. Buy cows out of a drought area, and if you buy them out of the drought area, you obviously probably can't find any grass. So that means you either had to dry lot them or move them someplace else. Short and long-term repercussions, the Texas State climatologist says we could have 5 to 10 more years of drought. That 12-month period beginning in September 2010, that 12-month period was the driest 12 months on record ever in Texas and New Mexico and probably in Oklahoma too. Shortages of feed, obviously. Tremendous cost to maintain your cow herd on a conventional setting if you happen to be in that middle of that drought and you didn't want to liquidate. I personally believe you can't feed your way out of the drought with hay, and people seem to think they can. I know people that in Texas that, not including whatever little grazing they got, and not including their labor or not including their land costs or anything else, spent $900 a pair to maintain a cow for that year right in there. And you say, how can that be? Well, first of all, cows will eat way more hay than you ever thought if you let them. And second, hay, poor quality hay can be way poorer than you ever thought it could be. And when that's costing you $250 to $300 a ton, you're going to have somewhere between an $800 and $1,000 bill to feed that cow out on range. Good news, east of the 98th meridian, which would be like going up and down through Grand Island and Wichita and so on and so forth. We have had a lot more rain this year. We're adding a lot more rain in certain areas west of there, but it's uneven. And even with the additional rain, at least early this year, we had even faster cow liquidation. I think it's coming to a halt, and I wouldn't be surprised that we'll start rebuilding this next year. There's a lot of talk about rebuilding or rebuilding the livestock industry in some areas, for example, in Texas with sheep, goats, hunting, and whatever. The big problem, you just can't imagine how big it is with sheep and goats, is the predators will just drive you crazy. And between the coyotes and the bobcats and the eagles and whatever else, it's hard to stay in business like they did at one time in Texas. And personally, even with goat and sheep prices got incredibly high. Got over $2 a hundredweight. I mean, over $2 a pound this several times this year. But I still don't think we'll see an increase in the goat and the sheep population, even though much of that country, other than the except for the predators, would be better suited to something else. The deer deal, I'm not sure where that's going. Some people are getting along with it well. Some people are, it seems like it's seen its heyday, and maybe it's coming off a little bit, although I've got a neighbor who tells me that he turned down $750,000 for a breeding buck that, I don't know what the Boone and Crockett would deal with dealing, but anyways, I said, well, you going to ever sell him? He says, I'm asking $1.25 million. I don't know if they'll get it or not, and I'd be south of San Antonio. Advantages to semi-confinement. Now get to this now. It reduced cow unit carrying capacity cost. I think in Nebraska you could run 2 cows per acre on a pretty good farm. I can do it with a pencil. I don't know if you could do it in reality, but you figure it out and you could take 2 cows and maintain them, wean a calf, and maybe take the calf up to 750 pounds or something like that. So even at $10,000 an acre land, that's $5,000 per cow unit capacity. Well, in the West especially, the land costs have just gotten berserk. There's lots of ranches that's selling in the West for $40,000 to $50,000 per cow unit carrying capacity. Well, do the math on that, and even with at 3% interest, that is, unless you believe in long-term land appreciation from those levels, that's tremendously high. Reduce cow energy requirements, and you cannot believe how much you reduce them. I can tell you this, we've had cows, it depends on the stage of gestation and that, but we've maintained cows on 13 pounds of dry matter per head per day, and they're content. And now that's a mixed ration and reasonably well balanced, and but just reducing the movement reduces your maintenance requirements so much. If you reduce the intake, you reduce the gut size, you reduce the liver, and these are very, very metabolically active tissues, and if you reduce that, you'll reduce your maintenance requirement. You'll change the look of your cows. We said Ed, I'm trying to think of the people from Wyoming that sent the cows to you about, maybe this was 7 or 8 years ago, and they dropped out and they wanted us to maintain them in the dry lot in up by in Antelope County. And anyway, I can remember when I was there when the guy came back out to look at his cows, he and his foreman, several months later, and the cows were in plenty good shape, and as far as I'm concerned. But they didn't have that huge barrel like a range cow will have, you know, if they're on, especially if they're on fairly poor forage and that. And I can remember the ranch foreman says, "Well, you just ruined these cows." He said, "These cows will never be the same." And I said, "Well, why do you think that?" And he said, "Well," he said, "they don't have any gut." He said, "They don't have any room in their nap." And he said, "They'll never be able to eat feed again." And, you know, it made him happy to see him have a big gut and whatever, but it doesn't add anything to the cow. And you sure as hell don't fool the packer buyer at the sale barn, because he can calculate that fill in a heartbeat. And so he's not going to pay you for it, but it's going to cost you to maintain the cow. The most fascinating thing to me is the weaning of the calf and the preconditioning just becomes such a piece of cake. We always feed our cows where we hope the calves can get in and get the feed too, and if we need to, we'll have a deal set up to where we can creep feed the calves too. And when it comes weaning time, and we wean any time from 120 days to probably 220, depending on a lot of things. But the calf never misses a beat and never misses the cow. Now the cow misses the calf, but you know, it's like the calf says, "You shut up, Mom, I'm eating, leave me alone." And people talk about all their health troubles they have with calf programs anymore. And I grant you they do. But you will have less health trouble with a confined or semi-confined type of cow than you ever will on a conventional system. The other thing that is good is that it's so easy to apply whatever technology you might want to apply, whether it be implanting or vaccines or what it might be. You've got them right there and you've got them captured. Disadvantage is obviously if land accumulation is part of your goal, you're not going to accumulate much land. And I sort of think the party's over on that in most parts of the country, but I could be wrong. But obviously with the land appreciation we've had, a conventional cow operation has been a great thing. But I don't think I wouldn't bet that these land prices will keep going up like they have. If you are buying and trying to take advantage of a drought and accumulate your cows then 2 or 3 points. I say cow trading in a drought, it's a lot better to buy than it is to sell, because the market will be depressed, most likely, in that particular area. The cows will be in poorer condition, so you're buying less weight. 1,100 pound cow might only weigh 850 pounds if it's a severe drought. And I think, and there's some smarter people than me in here that I don't know if they've given this any thought, but instinctively I think if you buy a poor condition cow because of the drought, and she's either heavy bred or has a calf by her side, then she's probably a low maintenance cow, or she wouldn't have gotten bred, or she wouldn't have had a calf. Now I can't prove that, but that's what my bias is, and it's a little bit like the Supreme Court justice, and they asked him to define pornography, and he said, well, I can't define it, but he said, I know it when I see it. And I think I know a low maintenance cow when I see one, but I can't really quite describe it. Disadvantages are some. There's obviously there's a shortage of grass, or else there wouldn't have been if there's a drought, there's a shortage of grass, leave it that way. You could be buying somebody else's problems. You know, the first cows they get rid of in a drought or anything else are going to be the ones that they can't keep in, or got a bad temperament, or who knows. So you're likely to buy somebody else's problems. Third, if you're the new kid in the block buying these cows, maybe you're not necessarily the most popular person, and then, well, let's just face it, in some areas of the country there's lots of thievery that goes on. And there's lots of people out there stealing cattle and cows and calves and everything else, and they'd rather, I can guarantee you, they'd rather steal a cow in Oklahoma from a guy that was from Texas or California than they would their neighbor's cow. So you have to just think about those things. When will the cow herd expand? I think 2014, but I wouldn't necessarily bet on it. Where will it expand? This is my theory. And it's because I've been someplace, I love the Southwest, but as a result I've been in a drought somewhere all my life. At some time, at some place, I've always been in a drought. And my theory is that the feed follows the water and the cattle follow the feed. So figure from there. Obviously Nebraska and Iowa and South Dakota are going to benefit. Places like, I think the Southeast will come back in the cow numbers, and that's some. I'm not sure what the long range weather thing is in the New Mexico, Arizona, Southern California, West Texas deal, because I think historically, maybe what we think is our bad years or our average years in reality, and what we thought were average years were in reality incredibly good years. How would I know? I don't know, but they're finding petroglyphs now in caves on the Pecos River that go back about 4,000 years, and civilizations that have disappeared, just like the Hohokams and the others, and they probably disappeared at least partially because of drought. People tend to talk about expansion forecasts and that based on weather, and everybody says, oh, it's a drought. Well, we haven't been in a drought for 10 straight years, and we kept going down in numbers, so it is more in drought. Their expenses have increased, but they have in a lot of things, and I don't think it's that simple. We're all getting older. I'm a prime example of that, and I think we have an aging ranching population, but I think we are very unrealistic in blaming something else that will just really tick off probably people in in various organizations, but go to the second paragraph there. We don't like to discuss the fact that cowmen may not be the smartest people in the room, but they didn't just fall off the turnip truck. And we see what's happening to the fat cattle market and how its fat cattle deal is consolidated and how difficult it is to market cattle now, and how 2 or 3 or 4 groups basically manipulate, I won't say manipulate, they control the whole deal. And I think there's a bunch of ranchers out there, I guarantee you I am. I don't want that to ever happen in the cow industry. And I have an exit strategy that the minute one of those people comes to me and tells me this is how we're going to buy these calves, I know what I'm going to do, and it's going to be a way to get along without them. And I think we have very limited cow expansion because we have a bunch of people that have no faith in the structure of this industry and which direction it's going. And they don't want to see the 10-year cattle cycle come back, and they don't want 2 or 3 people dictating what they're going to be paid for their calves. The fact that we've had declining numbers for the millennium, the 13 years, in what has actually been a very profitable segment of our industry, maybe the only consistently profitable one, sends a very powerful message. And the message definitely is people don't have a lot of faith in the structure of this industry. Now, Joe, if you print all that, Rollvile here, the Beef Man, by the way, it's their 50th year anniversary. If you print all that, you're obviously going to piss some people off at me, but that's all right, because I'm going to be in Mississippi and they won't bother me down there. But I think we overlook it. Final thoughts. Times are changing, they always will. Second, you need an exit strategy in this business. I don't care who would get in any business and not have an exit strategy. I'm a Kinky Friedman, Willie Nelson kind of a guy. If your horse stumbles a lot or dies, dismount. Get off and go somewhere else. And I hear the statement from my feedlot friends and that sometimes. I say, we're going to make the money back where we lost it. Well, now, I just don't understand that game plan. I mean, why would you go back where you lost your money and think next time around is going to be any different? Be skeptical, and I'm talking about my opinion. Probably everything Terry Kloppenstein tells you can probably take to the bank, but be skeptical of what some of the rest of us tell you at these talks. And I was on the dog and pony show circuit a lot in the 70s and early 80s. And I just was thinking about some things the other day that I heard at a lot of these talks or these meetings. They would have somebody talk on climate, and global cooling was the big topic. And there were several people said that there would, in a few years, there would be no corn growing north of Ohio, that the cooling was setting in so fast. Well, that sure changed, didn't it? World population was a big deal, and population control. And the theory was we were going to creep up to 6 billion people and level off and start back down. Well, we just blew through 7 and probably on our way to 10 by 2050, so that's obviously wrong. I'm not going to name any names there because we've all said things that have proven untrue, but 2 people that you, if you have any memory at all or were around, that you would know and identify with in the feedlot business and that, I was on programs with them when they said, when the grain prices spiked up in 1975, I think it was, we're probably, after another year or so, we're never gonna feed grain again. Well, that didn't work out, did it either? And well, you can go on and on. I could think of a lot of other things, and I said some of them, so I'm not passing the blame. Thank you. I have one other thing. I'm a poet of sorts, and not anymore. Caroline was my muse, and I just, since she died, I don't write much anymore. Anyway, but I wrote this about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was the good times don't last forever. And I think for the cow business, I'll go back to what I said. I think the last 10 years have been the combination of cattle prices, and packer cow prices, and land prices has been the best 10 years in a row we've ever had. And anyway, the harvest was good and the feed price is low. The pastures were green and the creeks all flow. Health's no problem because the pens are dry. And performance is great and the cattle are high. The banker's relaxed and he sits there smiling, and I feel kind of nervous because there's no reason for lying. He grins and he asks, "Can I lend you more money?" I should feel happy, but I feel sort of funny. There's something missing. It's a mysterious void. I called my psychic, and I'm reading on Freud. I'll write Ann and Abby when I get back, and if that doesn't work, I'll call Baxter Black. I asked my bartender, who was experienced and loyal, and we had several sessions along with Crown Royal. And he said, you're like a cow that's been given too much hot feed. You've had too much good news, and now you've OD'd. You're accustomed to bad news, and it may sound strange, but the business you're in, the good news will change. And I drove back to the ranch and met the wife at the gate, and she said, "We got problems, and you're 7 days late." The truck is stuck in the furthest field. The banker's mad the buyer's mad because the cattle didn't yield. The banker called, and they hired a new staff, and they took your values and cut them in half. Our foreman's in the hospital, got thrown off his horse. The cook went home and filed for divorce. The vet looked at our sick calves and the advice he gave. It's too late to worry because there's not many to save. She said, "Let's go to bed. You've done enough harm. The furnace isn't working and you can keep me warm." And then she whispered into my ear about some IRS letter, and it must be the bad news. I'm starting to feel better. So, thank you all.